Maybe stick to dollar store gifts next time. Oh wait, you probably can't even afford those. My cousin Jessica announced to the entire reception hall, holding up my handmade photo album while 400 guests laughed at her $500,000 wedding. She had no idea that the cheap gift contained the original incorporation papers for her company, or that I'd been signing her paychecks for the past 5 years. The only question now was whether I'd wait until after the honeymoon to show her the meaning of budget cuts. The laughter echoed off the crystal chandeliers of the Street Regis ballroom, each chuckle another nail in the coffin of what I'd once thought was family loyalty. I stood there in my simple navy dress, the only one I owned that was appropriate for such an event, watching Jessica parade around in her $50,000 Vera Wang gown, making sure everyone got a good look at my pathetic gift. "Look at this," Jessica continued, flipping through the carefully curated photos I'd spent 3 months assembling. "Pictures from our childhood. How quaint. Everyone else gave us actual valuable gifts, but leave it to Aria to bring a craft project." Her new husband, Bradley Wellington IDI, smirked from beside her. "Well, not everyone can afford to run in our circles, sweetheart. Some people have to get creative." The crowd erupted in fresh laughter. I saw my Aunt Patricia, Jessica's mother, trying to hide her amusement behind her champagne glass. Uncle Robert just shook his head with that familiar look of disappointment he perfected over the years. "Aria works very hard," my mother said weakly from her table, her voice barely carrying. "She's been putting in 80-hour weeks at her company." "Her company?" Jessica interrupted with a snort. "Mom told me all about it. Some little startup that probably won't last the year. What was it called again? Dynamic Solutions? Generic Enterprises? Quantum Dynamics," I corrected quietly. "Write that." Jessica waved dismissively. "I mean, it's sweet that you're trying, Aria, but maybe focus on getting a real job first. Like at an actual corporation. I could put in a word at Preston Global where I work. They might have some entry-level positions open." Preston Global. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. Of all the ironies in my life, this one might have been my favorite. "That's very generous," I said evenly. "I'll keep that in mind." "Do that," Bradley chimed in. "Jess is really going places at Preston. Head of digital marketing for the entire East Coast division. Youngest person to ever hold that position." "It's true," Jessica preened. "Mr. Preston himself said I'm invaluable to the company's growth strategy." Mr. Preston. I wondered if she meant old Thomas Preston, who'd been dead for 3 years, or his son Timothy, who'd sold the company 2 years ago to focus on his golf career. Probably neither, since the current CEO preferred to work through intermediaries. "Speaking of gifts," Aunt Patricia said loudly, redirecting attention to the gift table that looked like a small fortune in wrapped boxes. The Weatherbys gave a complete Hermes china set. The Vanderbilts provided a week at their private resort in the Maldives. "And the Hastings gave us a Tesla," Jessica squealed. "Can you believe it? A whole car." I glanced at the gift table, doing quick mental math. Between the china, the vacation packages, the jewelry, and apparently a vehicle, there had to be close to $1 million in wedding presents there. Meanwhile, my gift, a leather-bound photo album with pictures spanning our entire childhood, plus a few special documents tucked in the back, was being treated like a joke. "Well," I said, starting to turn away, "I hope you enjoy the gift for what it is. There's more to it than just photos." "Oh, I'm sure there is," Jessica called after me, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Did you hide a $20 bill in there? Or maybe some coupons?" The laughter followed me to the bar, where I ordered a Scotch neat, the good stuff, since Jessica's parents were paying. The bartender, a young man with kind eyes, poured generously. "Rough crowd," he said quietly. "You have no idea," I muttered, taking a sip that burned just right. "Aria?" I turned to find David Martinez, one of the few family friends I actually respected, approaching with a sympathetic smile. "David, hey." I managed a genuine smile. How's the firm? Growing like crazy. We just landed that Microsoft contract I was telling you about. He lowered his voice. I saw what happened over there. Jess is, well, she's always been like that. Trust me, I know. David studied me for a moment. You seem remarkably calm for someone who just got humiliated in front of 400 people. I shrugged. What can you do? Some people measure worth by price tags. I prefer to focus on value. Speaking of which, David said, his voice dropping even lower, I've been meaning to thank you for that introduction to the Yamamoto Group. That connection has been incredible for us. Happy to help, I said, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. Keep it quiet though. I prefer to fly under the radar. David looked at me strangely. You know, I've always wondered about your business. Quantum Dynamics, that's a pretty ambitious name for a startup. It started as a joke, I admitted. Back in college, my roommate said I should name my future company something that sounded like it could either be a tech firm or a physics lab. The name stuck. And what exactly does Quantum Dynamics do? I smiled. This and that. Acquisitions, mostly. Some restructuring. Corporate consulting. Boring stuff. David was about to respond when the DJ's voice boomed across the reception hall. Ladies and gentlemen, the bride would like to say a few words. Jessica had commandeered the microphone, her face flushed with champagne and victory. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming and for your amazingly generous gifts. She paused for effect. Well, almost everyone was generous. But hey, it's the thought that counts, right? Even if some thoughts are worth more at a garage sale than a wedding. More laughter. I saw my mother sink lower in her chair. But seriously, Jessica continued, Bradley and I are so blessed to have such successful, accomplished friends and family. It really shows in moments like these who's thriving and who's trying. That's enough, I said quietly, though no one could hear me over the applause. Jessica wasn't done. I mean, when I think about where I am, executive position at a Fortune 500 company, married to the love of my life, surrounded by luxury. And then I look at where some people are, still struggling to make ends meet, giving handmade gifts like we're in kindergarten. Jessica. Bradley tried to take the microphone, perhaps sensing she was going too far. No, I want to say this. She yanked it back. Aria, cousin, this is for you. I know things are hard right now. I know your little business is probably bleeding money. But don't give up, okay? Maybe one day you'll be able to afford a real gift. Maybe one day you'll even be able to afford a wedding of your own. Though probably not at a place like this. The room had gone from amused to uncomfortable. Even some of Jessica's snootiest friends were shifting awkwardly. That's quite enough, a clear voice said from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Eleanor Hastings, the grand dame of old money society, standing with her cane. A gift from the heart is worth more than all the gold in the world, Mrs. Hastings said firmly. And cruelty at one's own wedding is the poorest showing of all. Jessica flushed red. I was just joking. No. Mrs. Hastings interrupted. You were being cruel. And to your own family, no less. I've known Aria since she was a child, and she has more grace in her little finger than you've shown tonight with all your finery. I felt a rush of gratitude toward Mrs. Hastings, who'd always been kind to me despite our different tax brackets. Jessica stammered an apology and quickly handed the microphone back to the DJ. The music resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted. The damage was done. I finished my scotch and decided it was time to leave. But first, I had one more thing to do. I found Jessica by the gift table, admiring her haul with a group of bridesmaids. Jessica, I said quietly. A word? She rolled her eyes. What now, Aria? Going to lecture me about hurt feelings? No. I just wanted to make sure you look through that entire photo album when you get a chance, especially the back section. Why? Did you hide an apology letter for your cheap gift? Something like that, I said. Congratulations on your wedding. I truly hope you'll be very happy. I left before she could respond, collecting my coat and heading out into the cool October night. My phone was already buzzing with messages from David and a few other friends who'd witnessed the spectacle, but I ignored them all. Instead, I called my assistant, who answered on the first ring despite it being Saturday night. Samantha, I need you to initiate Protocol 7 on Monday morning. There was a pause. Are you sure? That's the nuclear option. I'm sure. Target: Preston Global, East Coast Digital Marketing Division. Understood. Anything else? Yes. Set up a meeting with the transition team for Tuesday. Full restructuring plan. And Samantha? Make sure all subsidiary communications go through legal first. I want every email, every memo, every sticky note to be perfect. Consider it done. I hung up and walked to my car, a modest Honda Civic that had prompted more than a few jokes from Jessica over the years. What she didn't know was that I owned 12 more cars, including a Lamborghini and a vintage Rolls-Royce. I just preferred the Honda. It was reliable, efficient, and didn't scream, "Look at me." The drive home gave me time to reflect on the evening. Part of me felt guilty about what was coming. Jessica was family, after all. But another part, the part that had spent years being mocked, dismissed, and belittled, felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The truth was simple. 5 years ago, I'd created Quantum Dynamics with the settlement money from a patent dispute. My roommate hadn't been joking about the name. We'd actually developed a quantum encryption algorithm that Microsoft desperately wanted. The settlement had been substantial. Instead of buying yachts and throwing money around, I'd invested quietly. Started acquiring struggling companies, restructuring them, making them profitable. Within 3 years, Quantum Dynamics had become a ghost in the machine of corporate America, invisible to most, but controlling more assets than some Fortune 500 companies. Preston Global had been my crown jewel acquisition. The company had been hemorrhaging money when Timothy Preston came to me, desperate for a buyer who would keep his father's legacy alive. I'd paid cash, kept the Preston name, and turned it around within 18 months. And Jessica? She'd been hired right around the time of the acquisition. She'd never met the new CEO because I worked exclusively through intermediaries. She'd never connected the dots between her struggling cousin and her corporate overlord. She'd been too busy looking down on me to look up the corporate structure. Monday morning came faster than expected. I arrived at Quantum Dynamics headquarters, a gleaming tower in the financial district that Jessica had probably never noticed, at 6 a.m. Samantha had everything prepared. The emails go out at 9 a.m. sharp, she informed me. Legal has reviewed everything. HR is on standby. Good. And the transition team? Conference room A. They're ready when you are. I spent the next 3 hours reviewing the plan. Preston Global's East Coast Digital Marketing Division had been underperforming for 2 years. Jessica's metrics were actually the worst in the company, a fact that had somehow never made it into her performance reviews. Her manager, it turned out, had been protecting her because he was friends with her father. At 8:55 a.m., I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office, looking out at the city below. Somewhere out there, Jessica was probably just arriving at Preston Global's offices, ready to start another week of coasting on connections rather than competence. At 9:00 a.m. exactly, the first email went out. From CEO at quantumdynamics.com to all Preston Global East Coast digital marketing staff. Sub-GGCT. Subsidiary dissolved by parent company CEO. Effective immediately. I watched my phone, knowing what would come next. It took exactly 3 minutes. The first call was from Jessica. I let it go to voicemail. The second was from her father, also voicemail. The third was from my mother. That one, I answered. Area. She was frantic. Jessica just called crying. Something about losing her job. The entire department being dissolved. She said the email was signed by someone at Quantum Dynamics. Isn't that your company? It is, I said simply. There was a long pause. Area, what did you do? I restructured an underperforming subsidiary. It's business, Mom. But Jessica said Preston Global is owned by Quantum Dynamics. That would mean that I'm her CEO. Yes. The silence stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Since when? She finally whispered. 5 years. Right around the time Jessica got hired, actually. Funny how that worked out. And you never said anything. Would it have mattered? Would any of you have treated me differently if you knew? Or would you have just come asking for money and favors? My mother didn't answer, which was answer enough. I need to go, Mom. I have a company to run. Tell Jessica that her final paycheck will include a generous severance package. More than she deserves, frankly, given her performance metrics. Area, wait. I hung up. By noon, my phone had logged 47 missed calls from various family members. The news had spread like wildfire through the family gossip network. My email was overflowing with messages ranging from apologetic to accusatory to outright begging. Samantha knocked and entered with a tablet. Ma'am, you need to see this. She handed me the tablet showing a social media post from Jessica. Betrayed by my own family. My cousin destroyed my career out of jealousy. Area Chen is a snake who hid her wealth while pretending to be poor. I smiled. Screenshot that. Send it to legal. She just violated her NDA. Already done. Legal says it's actionable. Good. Oh, and Samantha. Set up a meeting with Mrs. Eleanor Hastings. I want to discuss that charity foundation she's been trying to get funded. The one for underprivileged students. That's the one. I think Quantum Dynamics can spare, say, $10 million as an initial investment. Samantha smiled. I'll set it up right away. That evening, I finally opened Jessica's voicemails. Most were what I expected: rage, accusations, threats of lawsuits. But the last one was different. I looked at the album, she said, her voice quiet. I found the incorporation papers, the acquisition documents. They're the performance reviews you never sent. I see it now. I see what you were trying to tell me. That I was nothing without your protection. That everything I bragged about was because of you. A pause. I'm not calling to apologize. We both know I don't deserve forgiveness. I'm just calling to say, I understand now. I understand why you did it. I deleted the voicemail and went back to work. There was a telecommunications company in Seattle that was ripe for acquisition, and 3 more subsidiaries that needed restructuring. Jessica would land on her feet. People like her always did. She'd use her connections, probably play the victim, definitely find another job where she could coast on charm and family ties rather than merit. But she'd never forget the day her entire department's emails bounced back. Subject line: subsidiary dissolved by parent company CEO. And every time she mocked someone for their appearance, their car, their cheap gifts, maybe she'd remember that the cousin she humiliated in front of 400 people had been signing her paychecks all along. Maybe she'd remember that wealth isn't always worn on the outside. Maybe she'd remember that the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with a severance package and a lesson in humility. Or maybe she wouldn't learn anything at all. Either way, I had a company to run. And despite what my family thought, I hadn't built my empire on revenge or jealousy. I built it on value, not price tags. The same principle behind a simple photo album that was worth more than all the Hermes china in the world, if you knew where to look. But then again, Jessica had never been good at looking beneath the surface. Her loss, literally,